Hey, what is up guys? Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. Today we're taking a look specifically at cards that were expected to be in the 2021 Megatins, but were actually excluded. Now I'm not talking about big things like Access Code Talker, Lightning Storm, Forbidden Droplet, or Chamber Dragon Maid, which are some of the headline exclusions that are either confirmed or expected to be reprinted by the end of the year. Instead, I'm taking a look at a few cards that may have flown under the radar and not gotten as much attention as some of those other things. Of course, we do run the risk of these cards being in either Maximum Gold or Brothers of Legend, but if not, then there's certainly potential for these cards to shoot up in price in the near future. I'm not going to say that these are investments necessarily, because it's entirely up to Konami as to whether or not they will be good in the future with either new support or a ban list, or if they will get reprinted. But they're definitely cards to consider picking up if you believe in them and can get them at a good enough price. Let's get started. Alright, so the first card I'm looking at here is Kawakimarus Supplier. This is a rock monster that you can special summon from your hand if a face-up rock monster you control is sent to the graveyard, and it also searches for a card that lists Iron Core of Kawakimaru somewhere on the card when it is special summoned. This card was really useful in the Adamancipator deck, since you could summon it whenever any of your rocks went to the graveyard. Since it doesn't miss timing to special summon itself, you could also summon it with an Adamancipator tuner effect and still get to search for a copy of Guardian, which is really awesome. Anyways, this card's exclusion from the tins is especially notable because we did see reprints to all of the different Adamancipator cards, including the most expensive piece of the deck in Adamancipator Researcher. After the tins, I'd actually consider Adamancipators to be a fairly budget deck, since a lot of people will be overlooking the archetype in favor of the other more popular cards that are being reprinted. They're also not especially popular right now, as they haven't seen as much competitive success with the banning of Block Dragon, but that being said, I think a lot of people will want to pick up the core now that it is so cheap, and that includes picking up some copies of Suppliers, which has driven up the demand for this card. The card was only a few dollars before, but as of right now the card is sitting at $15 each on TCG Player, with very few quantities available on the market. This is definitely a card to keep an eye on. I personally don't think Adamancipators will be doing anything too crazy anytime soon, so I would expect Supplier to cool down a little bit, but as a fairly popular archetype that used to be really expensive to play but is now pretty budget, expect the demand for this card to keep its price in the double digits until it gets reprinted. Next up, Madolche Salon is a card that was actually already trending upwards prior to the Megatin list being spoiled, and has only seen a fairly small bump up in price since the list was revealed. Madolche Salon is actually a great card for the Madolche deck, as basically a continuous spell version of Double Summon that can also let you search for a Madolche spell or trap card. I feel like Madolches are a little bit strange in that they top every now and then out of nowhere, but never really manage to do so consistently. I feel like every month or so, we'll see someone do really well with Madolches and then forget about it for the next little while. While Madolche Salon currently being a $17 card feels like the ultimate sort of gamble, as its price depends entirely on whether or not the deck sees success versus when it gets its reprint. Now on one hand, I feel like seeing Madolche's top a regional or something like that would suddenly put it back on everyone's radar and would send the card straight up to $30 or something like that. The archetype is also really cute and adorable, so there are a lot of casual players that will want to pick it up as well, and with reprints to Angeli, Chocolat a la Mode, and Magellan already released, Salon is, I believe, the last card from the archetype that really needs a reprint for the deck to be extremely budget friendly. On the other hand though, if it were to get reprinted, the card would instantly become only worth $1 or $2, kind of like what we've seen from other Madolche cards that have been reprinted over the last couple of years. This one is entirely up to you guys and how brave you're feeling. I think that if I could grab them for around $10 or so, I would consider picking them up, but anything more than that, I would kind of hold off and wait for the card to be reprinted, but of course you guys will each have your own independent risk appetites. Okay, so this one is kind of a weird, more obscure one. We have Arch Nemesis Ishados. Now this is a level 11 monster that you can special summon by banishing 3 monsters with different types from your graveyard. It can't be destroyed by card effects, and it also has an ignition effect where you can declare a certain type, destroy all monsters on the field with that type, and then prevent either player from special summoning that type of monster until the end of the next turn. Pretty interesting card, and at first glance it definitely seems like it could have applications within the meta, even though decks may play multiple types at the moment. Locking certain strategies out of a single type, such as locking Tri-Brigades out of beasts or Drytrons out of machines or fairies, could make it very difficult for them to function. Now, in my opinion, Shadows has always been a card with a lot of potential, but just never really had a deck that you could play it in to really abuse it. I think I do remember seeing it used at one point in some sort of Lightsworn combo deck, and it might be useful in some sort of Dragon Link deck as well, but outside of those things, nothing that can play it really seems to come to mind. However, I guess people are buying the card out simply because of its potential, as the card is now up from being $5 or so a month ago to now being $12 a piece on TCG Player. Buying a card because of its potential is always riskier, since it takes the right deck coming out to allow the card to really shine, and there's no guarantee that the card won't be reprinted before then. If you guys do know what deck it is that people are looking at playing as Shadows in, please do let me know in the comments section, but until I see something a little more concrete that can use this card, unless I'm getting it for like $5 or under, I'm staying away from this card and offloading any extra copies I'd happen to have. So this one's a little bit less exciting. I figured we should talk about them because I saw someone actually mentioning them on Facebook like last week, but the Ancient Warrior cards were all actually excluded from the 2021 Megatins, which I think is kind of interesting. Obviously the pure deck was never good. I think a few different cards were used in like a Tri-Brigade Ancient Warrior variant at one point. However, I don't really see why you would want to play them over like Zodiac cards. What makes this engine even worse now is that they are all Beast Warriors and Tanky was just limited, so they probably still will not see any play moving forward, even with Zodiac Barrage banned. Fortunately, there is no secret rare Ancient Warrior card, but there are a couple of Ultras. Sun Mu, I think, is the more notable one at $3 a piece right now. I think it lets you search for an Ancient Warrior monster from your deck, so it's probably a 3 of if you were using the engine before. Personally, I don't see a lot of point in investing in this engine unless you want to wait for when Tanky goes back to 3 a couple of years from now, or you think that Ancient Warriors are going to get some random support that makes them a lot better than they are now. Honestly, I would offload the archetype for whatever value you can, and maybe stay away from picking up the Ultras unless you can snag them for really cheap, like under $1 or something like that. Now, speaking of Ancient Warriors, there is one card that should be excluded from the list of cards to stay away from, and that is Double Dragon Lords. So this card is a Link 2 Beast Warrior monster, and it's notable because it can be special summoned by Tri-Brigade decks without needing an Ancient Warrior monster, thanks to the effects of the Tri-Brigades, and it's a really cheap monster to make also, being a Link 2. It's basically a Beast Warrior version of Heavenly Spheres, letting you send a card from your hand or field to the graveyard to bounce an opponent's face-up card to the hand. Now, this card is just a super rare, but it is from Rise of the Duelist, which is one of the harder sets to find cards from. Also, Tri-Brigade still looks like it's going to be a top tier deck this upcoming format, even despite hits to Barrage and Tanky. The Tri-Brigade cards themselves are entirely untouched, and Revolt is still a really powerful card. I think that if you're looking at grabbing Tri-Brigade stuff when the tins come out, you should definitely consider picking up Double Dragon Lords now, since it is only $2 a piece on TCG Player, which in my opinion is a complete steal. I firmly believe that if the Tri-Brigade deck continues to do well in the upcoming format and top events after the new list, and the card obviously doesn't get reprinted, we could see Double Dragon Lords hit at least $5 a piece, so it's definitely a card you want to grab early on if you are going to be picking them up anyways. It's a card to keep your eye on moving forward either way, since it could be a very useful card in the meta, and the resulting demand, combined with how difficult it is to find the card, would definitely send its price way up. Okay, so we're going to round out the video here by looking at the TCG exclusive archetypes that were neglected. The first one here being the Plunder Patrol cards. Now, I've shown on screen Whitebeard and Redbeard, as despite being Ultras, these are actually the most expensive cards from the archetype. But the archetype does contain a few secret rare extra deck monsters in the forms of Mork, Bran, and Lys, though they are even cheaper than these cards are. So I remember when the Plunder Patrols were first announced, we all thought they were going to be crazy because of how they could cheat out monsters from your extra deck. However, even with multiple waves of support and then the release of Black Eyes a couple of sets ago, the deck still hasn't found any sort of competitive success. So with Redbeard and Whitebeard, even though we've seen these cards at anywhere from $10 to $20 in the past, just based off of their potential, they are now down to $6 to $7 each, despite never being reprinted. The big question mark here is if the archetype will ever get any sort of support that's good enough to put them on the map, and for now it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening. That's not to say that it won't, but we've been disappointed by this archetype too many times in the past. Personally, I'm not expecting anything or getting my hopes up too high. I have a set of each card from the archetype that I'm holding on to just in case, but aside from that, I've moved all of my extra copies. If you guys are still holding on to these cards even now, they're probably too low right now to be worth moving, so there's not really a point in selling them unless there's some sort of catalyst that drives the price up, but at the same time, I wouldn't be looking to actively pick them up quite yet either. Alright, so the last card we're going to take a look at here is the mutant cards. Now with mutants, we're not looking at very many different things. They only got one wave of support in Phantom Rage. I think the actual archetype only consists of maybe 10 cards or so, and they just have one secret rare in Mutant Ultimus, the fusion boss monster, which is only $3 right now. So mutants are very interesting with only the one wave of support. I remember a lot of people were trying out the deck shortly after it came out, and it was able to do some cool things on its own, having some decent searchability and recursion, combined with the ability to main deck and abuse Dimension Shifter. It left a lot of people excited for a second wave of support that just never ended up coming. The archetype just fell off as a result, and even now it feels really incomplete. However, I think we have more reason to be optimistic about mutants than the Plunder Patrols. With the Plunders, we already got that OCG debut core set kind of card in Black Eyes, which didn't help the deck out that much, but we didn't get anything like that for the mutants yet, so it could be coming out within the next couple of core sets. Looking at past TCG exclusive archetypes, the cards introduced by the OCG, such as Guru for Subterrors or Double Helix for Spirals, can actually be really cool and help to take the deck to the next level. So there's certainly a chance that that could be what will happen for mutants. Now looking at the cards, you should be able to pick up an entire mutant core for under $20, so given how cheap it is and how much potential there is there, I think it would be silly not to own at least one core, since there's a decent amount of upside potential, not a whole lot of potential downside. Obviously that's not a guarantee, and it's totally possible that mutants will be forgotten about by Konami forever, but if you're looking for something cheap to burn a little bit of money on and sit on for quite a while, other than Bitcoin, mutants just might be your best bet. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. I always find it interesting to see what cards Konami excludes from the tins, because something always ends up jumping up in price from them as a result. It's just a matter of what that's going to be. For example, I remember Condemned Witch being expensive for a little while because you could randomly use it to summon Lopter, that generator monster released in Eternity Code, and I don't think anyone was expecting that, so usually these cards that jump up in price are going to be pretty surprising. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please do make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about the cards that we talked about today, and also let me know what other cards you guys see trending on the market so I can cover them in a future episode. Also, if you haven't already, of course, make sure you hit that subscribe button for all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.